Hi, my name is Will Matthews, and today I'm presenting from spinning to streaming, where we're going to be talking about the digital and physical formats of music and how they've changed over the last century. I also have a few guest appearances from my dad who can recollect some of his personal experiences about obtaining and listening to music in the past decades. All right, let's begin with the history of music media. The first music player available to the general public was the gramophone, which was introduced at the end of the 19th century. And this was essentially the first device that allowed people to listen to recorded music, unlike the music box, which did not have that capability. Unfortunately, though, at this time, the gramophone was still kind of considered a novelty item that only the wealthy could purchase, and it really wasn't available for the average consumer. But that kind of changed when the vinyl LP was introduced in 1948, which allowed people to go out and buy full album records, unlike the 45s and 78s available before. And these were actually affordable for middle to upper class individuals. So the average consumer actually could listen to recorded music from the comfort of their own home at that time. All right, so the first physical format of music that I want to talk about is the vinyl LP, which I previously mentioned, which was introduced in the 1940s by Columbia Records and was the first time that people could listen to full albums on one record, unlike 45s and 78s, which had limited capabilities to store more than one or two songs. These, however, didn't really garner a whole lot of popularity until around the 1960s and 1970s when they became the go-to method of storing music. They also made a resurgence in the 2000s as a nostalgic device, as well as being one of the best to this day devices for storing music in a physical format. The 8-track superseded the vinyl LP in the early 1960s and remained relevant until the mid 1970s. The 8-track was a landmark achievement because it was the first time people could listen to music portably, whether it was in their car or with a portable 8-track player. This, however, was largely inferior to the vinyl LP in hindsight because the 8-track had very limited capabilities to store music in large quantities, and oftentimes songs would get cut off or not play through entirely because of the limited amount of tape that could be held inside them. I'm going to pass this off to my dad, who will give his own personal experiences with the 8-track.
My first experiences buying music were buying 8-track tapes, which you would laugh at these days because these 8-track tapes had basically four segments, right? And one, two, three, four. And so sometimes a song would get cut off in the middle of the segment.
Yeah.
So you go, and the segments are just like, they would stop and they would click, click. And so you could be in the middle of a song and the song could cut across, two different tracks, basically.
Following the invention of the 8-track was the cassette, which was introduced in the 1970s. The cassette and the 8-track were alike in the sense that both of them used tape to play their music. However, the cassette was a vast improvement over the 8-track as it had greater storage capabilities and better sound quality, as well as it became much more portable. Therefore, the players were a lot easier to lug around for the average consumer. The cassette's major flaw, though, was every time you would play it, it would degrade the quality of the tape to the point where it would break or it would become no longer playable. So the durability hailed in comparison to the vinyl LP, which was still widely popular at this time. However, the cassette's major success was that it introduced much more people to the realm of owning music for themselves. The last physical format of music I'd like to talk about today is the compact disc, also widely known as the CD. The CD was introduced in 1982 and to this day remains the best way of storing music on a physical device. The compact disc's greatest strengths were its durability, which dwarfed that of the vinyl LP, which was the previous best way to store music in a durable format, because it could take a beating much greater than that of vinyl. It also has the best audio quality compared to the previous devices, which makes it the best representation of the music as it was originally recorded. Compact discs also widely became incorporated into cars, as many cars up until the last decade had compact disc players stored into them. And even to this day, there are still cars that carry them around. Digital formats eventually took over the physical formatting of music, as it became easier for a person to carry around one device that could play all their music, rather than having to carry around different formats of music as well as the players that go along with them. The MP3 player was the first of these kinds of device to allow one to play a digital version of a song, and was also one of the most portable formats of carrying music, as an MP3 player could fit into your pocket just as a cell phone would today. The MP3 format name comes from the codec that the music is digitally converted to. And while this isn't the first format for music to be digitally converted to, it's one of the very first that was able to be played portably. Streaming services followed shortly behind MP3 players with the creation of Napster in 2001. Despite such an early creation, streaming services for music did not become widely popular until the invention of the smartphone came along, which allowed a person to circumvent having to purchase one device made specifically for streaming or playing music. Streaming services are by large the most popular form of accessing music today due to its strength of being allowed to access the internet to find new music as well as old music rather than having to download it. Streaming services are what we've grown most accustomed to, and for the near future, they seem like they're here to stay. Well, that wraps up my presentation, and I want to thank everybody for listening along. I hope that, if anything, you guys learned something new, but what I most hope for is that now with all this newfound information, you guys have a much greater appreciation for the music that we listen to on a day-to-day basis. Thank you once again for listening.